In this tutorial we'll have a look at how audio is handled on a Mistika timeline. Mistika has limited audio capabilities. It's not an audio mixing tool, but it does have the ability to arrange tracks, do basic mixes, and organize the audio output channels of the various files. On the timeline here we have two clips, and up until now in the tutorials all the clips have looked like this, being solid darker green. You'll notice this one has a stripe down the bottom of it. This is signifying that this clip has both video and audio. There are three ways that a clip can get into that status. The first is if the clip has been captured from tape as a video and audio event. The second is if I've rendered a piece of media with sound embedded. And the third is if this was related to a movie file that had embedded audio in it. As soon as any clip has audio, some basic parameters appear. If you're on a dual GUI, then double click and this will appear on your right hand side. You can see that we have a master fade level, which is a percentage, and then a gain that we can set to the level of the clip in dBs. Then for each track that's present we have an individual fade and gain. So this particular clip has two audio tracks, a stereo pair. In fact, each clip can have up to 8 tracks, and if this had more than 2 tracks, then they'd be listed here. Of course, these parameters can be animated on the curve graph like any other. Having got a clip with audio, there are a couple of ways that we can visually see those audio tracks. Firstly, in our record monitor, under menu, we can see the audio wave. So here we can see a visual representation of the audio that's taking place in that clip. This also shows us that we have 2 active tracks, and that tracks 3 through to 8 are not present. We can also split the video and audio into separate tracks so that we can edit them differently. So by selecting a clip and going to edit, we have audio visual break, AV break, here. And as you can see, I've now got a separate instance of audio, which means that this can be edited differently, the sync changed, and so on. We also have an AV combine function, which will reunite a split pair of video and audio. The combine only works with clips that once upon a time were related. Having got our audio clips separately, as we drag along with the right mouse button or equivalent pen button, we can see the waveform. We can change the size of our timeline to see this more clearly. Or under Edit, Setup, we could enable the Show Audio Strip function, which then shows the entire waveform of the audio. When Mistika plays audio, it'll actually play all the audio it finds within the range of the cursor. So if I were to press play now, it would actually be equally mixing this clip, and this clip. Under the Dashboard tab for audio, we have an audio router on this side and a mixer on this side. The router allows us to direct a channel of audio from wherever it is in the source clip to any one of the 8 output channels. So those 8 outputs could either be thought of as one of the 8 physical outputs from the system, or to one of 8 channels of a receiving audio file if we were to process one, for example an 8-channel AIFF file. This panel does not animate. Because we have an audio clip selected that has 2 channels, channels 1 and 2 of the available 8 have become available. And in its default routing, channel 1 will go to the channel 1 output of the system and channel 2 accordingly. So for example, if I press play now, we would see we've got activity on channels 1 and 2. So working through these controls, the top number here is which of the source channels we're talking about. So this column here is all to do with channel 1 of this input clip, or channel 2 of this input clip. So for example, if I switch this to channel 4, knowing that actually there isn't a fourth channel, when I press play now, we can see that we've lost our channel 1. Because rather than route channel 1, we were looking for something on channel 4. We can mute a track or invert its phase, and this is the pan control that affects the bias of whether the track is sent to, in this case, more to channel 1 or more to channel 2. So for example, if I did this, we would now find that I have no audio on channel 1 again. For the reason I've taken the channel 1 information from the source clip and I've pushed it over to the right, which in this case would be over to channel 2. We have some controls here for gain of the channels, and this function changes the target pairing for our audio. So for example, if I set this to 5 and 6, with this pan to the left of those two channels, now channel 1 will be sent to channel 5, which would be this one. The groups allow you to gang controls together. Since we've only got a stereo pair here, it's not going to make so much sense, so I'll do it over on these because it's the same idea. Normally each one of these channels runs independently. But for example, I could set this to be group A, maybe this to be group B, and perhaps all these to be group C's. And it's a ganging of controls, so now whatever I pick in group A, they'll go together, or group B will go together, or group C will go together. The other controls here, we can solo a channel, which as you can see mutes all the others, or of course mute a channel, a pan control, and of course a level. We can also mute our master left and right, or over here mute the entire timeline. A practical example of using this might be to arrange a 5:1 surround audio track. So let's just go through that. I'm going to import from my project this folder which has 6 discrete tracks, being left and right front, left and right rear, center and sub. So I'll click the folder and go import all movies. So I'll just go to the media tab, home. So there's the folder of all the audio tracks that it's created for me. So I'll just load them in order. So I'd like the left one first, then the right, then the center, then the sub, then the left surround, and the right surround. Just line those up. So you can see I have different audio waveforms on all of those. So going to the router, this I want to be on channel 1, which it already is, because you can see it's panned to the left of this stereo pair, so that will come out of channel 1. You'll also notice that these are single WAV tracks, so for each one of these there is only a channel 1, signified by the fact that only one of these channels is lit up. So going down to the next channel, this needs to be on channel 2. So to do that, I have my pairing on channels 1 and 2, and simply bring the pan over to the right. So now this top one is on channel 1, the second one down is on channel 2. The third one I want on channel 3, so for that I choose my stereo pairing to be 3 and 4 and leave this to the left of those two channels. And to channel 4, pan over to the right, channel 5 and channel 6. So now when I play all those together, we can see we've got a spread of channels across the map that I need. Of course I could always group those as well, just to make the timeline a bit clearer. In setup we have some various functions, worth a checking of the written manual for this. One of the key things is how many input and output channels the system is set to generate. So this refers to when I render an audio file. At the moment mine is set to 2 channels. So in fact, if I wanted to render this as a single AIFF file, I need to change this to more channels. Notice that when you make a change here, you need to set default and restart Mistika in order for it to take effect. A common problem sometimes you'll find is if you're trying to output to, say, an MPEG. If this output channels is set to a greater number of channels than the target movie file can take, it might generate an error. So if you ever see that kind of error, just come back in here and perhaps set this back to 2. Defeat audio processing basically turns off all processing of the audio channels. The specific reason you might want to do that is if you're working with material that has Dolby E encoding, in which case the audio files are data streams rather than audio, and any manipulation of those channels would then destroy that data. And finally, under Tools, we have a couple of little helpful gadgets. We can change the audio sample rate of a clip. It's important to note that all clips on the Mistika timeline need to be the same audio sample rate, otherwise they won't play at the right speed. 48 kHz is the normal broadcast standard. You might well find you'll get a lot of clips at 44.1, which is the CD standard. We can change the speed of audio clips, and also there's a split audio channels function here. This is quite useful if you're given a master multi-channel clip, but you need each channel as a separate WAV, like these were, because when you're making a DCP package, you need separate WAV channels. So that gives an overview of how audio is handled inside Mistika. Just one other note of something that almost certainly comes with your Linux system. It's nothing to do with Mistika as such, but it's quite handy to know that it's there. If you go to your program menu and look for media editing, there's something called Audacity, which is an open source audio manipulation program. So you can load in your layers of audio in here, and it has quite a lot of useful functions, particularly things like changing the speed and pitch of a track, for example, to change something from the equivalent of running at 25 frames a second to 24, so the track runs at a different speed but not at a different pitch. Also click removals and noise removals, and quite a lot of useful tools in here. You can simply import the AIFF files that are generated by Mistika, resave them and import them back in. So that's Audacity.